Hi, fellow artists. This is Mari Chen, and welcome back to my channel. Today, we are doing something a little different. So, like last time, I actually shared a tutorial on how to do one of my paintings. This time, I am answering a direct inquiry from someone. They had stated that they wanted to find a way to get their ideas from their head and onto paper. So, I'm actually not going to be painting or drawing or anything this time. I will do that in another video, but I kind of just wanted to sit and chat with you guys about my creative process in hopes that it will help this individual and anyone else who may come across this channel, this video specifically, on how to get those ideas from here to here or whatever paper you have. So I have three pieces of advice that I want to talk to you about in this video, and I believe that maybe I will also break it down into separate videos of showing actual examples of me doing this. But I figured a short little video just explaining it would be a good idea as well. So the first thing I'm going to talk to you all about is intuitive exploration and how that breeds creativity. So, while this request is how to get the ideas that are already there down onto the paper, one of the ways that I have found is very helpful for me in doing so is actually going into my work without a plan. Going into some sessions without actually having an idea. Again, this is not directly answering the question. This is a roundabout, is what I'm going to call it. And the reason I say intuitive exploration breeds creativity is because you don't always have to have a fully formed idea or an idea at all in the beginning. Sometimes you just need to exercise your creative muscle and get that discipline going. And what that does for you as you grow in your art is eventually you'll become so free in the things that you do that when you do have ideas, you won't be afraid of putting them down, but you'll already have that confidence because you have exercised the muscle of creativity so much that you would be able to actually do such a thing. And I just think that it's so important to train your imagination to discover ideas and things that you see with your eyes instead of forcing them. That way, when it gets to the point where you have a specific idea, which we will talk about here as well, then it'll be a lot easier for you. Because as someone who sometimes struggles with the imagination when it comes to visual arts, I get this so much. And so, speaking on intuitive art, I actually want to take a moment to go ahead and show you guys some examples. So, if I, to see if I can really hone it in for you. And again, like I said, we will do a separate video on this in particular. But let's go ahead and switch my camera. All right. So here we are again at my lovely doubly desk. And I want to show you all, this is one of my art journals. Beware, we might flip past some quote unquote ugly art. I don't care. So anyway, my little journal is where I do everything just based off of how I feel. So in these two examples right here, what we have is me taking watercolor and allowing it to just be put onto the paper. And then I let it dry. And once it dries, I took a permanent marker, one of those fine points. Um, Let me show you. One of those fine points like these. See? So fine. And I just started to make marks on all of the hard edges of the watercolor. And this was really, really fun. And inside of it, even though these look like a huge mess, because they are, I began to see so many different things that I thought were just fun. And that's really all that mattered to me. Like here, it looks like some kind of weird headed animal, like some weird kind of skull. There's the eye, and the weird mouth and jawline here. Even in work right here, it felt like there was a person reaching out and grabbing something here, just many different things. I wanted to see what I could see within the art and it not necessarily having a specific destination. So then when we go to a different example, we have this right here. I did the exact same thing. I put watercolor on the paper, let it dry, and then I took a moment to think about what I saw. Before anything came to fruition, I was like, what do I see? Well, I looked at it and I felt like there were mountains in this area. So what I did is I just started to outline them with my fine point pen and doing some other areas that had hard edges. And I was like, you know what? I feel like this is the land in the sky. So I went back in with my paint and I started to fill certain areas in more because these were a lot lighter. The paint was just put on very lightly, but I wanted this to be land, the blue areas to be more of the water, and there's the sky, of course. So again, that's another example. And then here we have another example of me doing the same thing. This to me is just like some scary looking butterfly. I'm not even gonna lie. Then on this, doing the same thing, I ended up creating a weird weeping face and everything was just kind of fogged up. So I think that this is a very good opportunity, just allowing yourself to do intuitive art and then see, there's my ugly art right there, and then seeing what you come up with as you go along. But then here's another example of intuitive art that I have that's actually going to go the long way. And I decided to go with a feeling. One day I was feeling very discontent. I was very unhappy about something that I did not want to face. And so I actually wrote the word out. And in writing that word out, then I took some watercolor markers and just made a mess around it, made my little squiggly lines. Again, yes, these are with watercolor markers. And then again, let everything dry. This doesn't always work if you're working with something that, I don't know, does not have the results that watercolor does, but you can figure out how to use it with the medium that you most work with. And so I started to just make my lines again and fill things out from there. And you know what? While this feels very chaotic, I feel like it portrays the feeling of discontent rather perfectly. Because in this moment, not only was I discontent, but I was spiraling a lot. And so this is what that represents for me. So that is just one way. Here's another example of just doing that intuitive art and seeing where things take us. So another example here, this was when her distress became mine, and I was very distressed when I was making this one. This is when distress met hope. I do have another one when hope took flight, but that's not in here right now. So then the next point that I want to go to is starting before you're ready, because the paper is not sacred. So a lot of times we have a vision, we have an idea in our minds, and there are many reasons why we don't start. One of those reasons could be because we don't have a complete vision. We have this idea and we're like, I don't know, it's not 100%. I have to have the whole idea before I can actually put it to paper. And then another reason why we sometimes do not start with our ideas is because we feel some sense of inferiority, or maybe we have, what do you call it? Imposter syndrome. Maybe we feel like we don't have the skill to release whatever the art is that we have inside of us. But I'm going to tell you, just like I told people on my Patreon in my Mari's Musing, just because you feel like you do not have the skill does not mean that you should not do the art. Right? Whatever it is that you're thinking, whatever that it is that you are feeling, the time to put it down is now. Even if it doesn't come out good like you want it to, the idea is fresh in your mind, and the point is to get it down onto that piece of paper. Because guess what? It is just a piece of paper. Paper can be bought again. Yes, I know sometimes, depending on what kind of paper you buy, it is extremely expensive, but it's just paper. It can be ripped apart, it can be balled up and thrown away, it can be flipped onto the other side to try again or try a new idea. You know, we have this concept of being so intimidated by paper and not trusting in our own ideas that we don't allow ourselves to work through this to build our own confidence. Art grows step by step. And so I want to show an example of that. Here I was trying to learn double exposure, which is something that I'm still working on. Okay. This is my little, I drew it here first and then drew it there. So I was working on double exposure and I wanted to create a painting in which it was me and this rose. And this was my first attempt. And I was like, huh, not a bad idea. I want to try it again and see if there are some areas that I can do better. So I went and I did it again. But when I was redrawing myself on the paper, I had flipped it upside down so that I could redraw the rose. Because if I drew something already, I don't want to draw it again. I'm just going to trace it. It's a tracing of my own drawing. So then I flipped my paper upside down and I was like, whoa, my face is there. That's super cool. So I decided to draw myself twice. And I remember drawing this on my paper and thinking to myself, I have grossly overestimated myself. I thought that I was tripping. I'm like, yeah, no, this isn't a good idea. I don't even know how I would be able to create this into something excellent. But the next day I was like, I'm still going to go for it anyway. And that's what I did. And you know what? One could sit and look and say, there are so many imperfections with this. But I am oh so proud of myself. I know the things that I did wrong, and I don't even care because I went forward. This was an idea that I had, and it was not 100% complete. All I knew is that I wanted both of these faces to look different. I didn't know if I wanted it to look like it was underwater or in outer space. I didn't know if I wanted one face to look real and the other one to look more fanciful. I didn't know if I wanted to invert my colors. Nothing. This was just the idea that I had, and I had to put it on paper, take a break. Like I literally drew it out, stepped away from it, came back, chose the colors that I wanted to use, which were the same colors I put in here, minus the green, and then went from there. So my other piece of advice truly is start before you're ready. If you have part of an idea, go ahead and do it. If you've got 75% of an idea, go ahead and do it, you know? And if you mess up one time, you can do it again and you can do it again and you can do it again and again and again. And then the other thing that I encourage you to do, just like a point two part B of this, start before you're ready, is start on a scrap piece of paper. not everything you do has to start on a big piece of paper or your main paper. This is on regular sketchbook paper, okay? I had an idea of what I wanted to do with my grandmother. Sorry, you can see the glare. I'm not going to take it out. She's got her hands up, blowing a kiss, right? I hate doing hands. So I took it away. And I did this on regular paper. And then I went ahead and painted this on a larger piece of paper. I'm not going to show it here because it's a huge piece of paper. It's my first ever huge full sheet watercolor painting. So sometimes you just got to like do a rough draft. That's the best way to go about this. And you got to experiment with whatever ideas are in your head, and you may come up with something absolutely amazing. So that is my second tip. My third tip and my final tip for today, because I feel like this video is already long and I want to shorten it a little bit, it's going to be let your plan evolve on purpose. So this is for those moments where you actually have a plan. The next thing that I can offer to you guys, and hopefully it's helpful, is to let your plan evolve on purpose. Starting with a plan, starting with an idea, or even a reference for whatever this is that you have going on up here is very helpful. But creativity often happens when you allow yourself to deviate from the plan. Unexpected changes, using new materials, spontaneous discoveries, all of those things can lead you somewhere even more meaningful than you first imagined. And so I want to share some examples with you all. Here is, excuse the lights. Here's a painting, two paintings I had done of my grandfather. The first one was the one I did in memory of him. And then I wanted to do it again because he had been so many places in the world, and I was told by my dad that he really wanted to go to Africa. So my original plan was actually to just paint him again because I wanted to try to paint him better. And I honestly think my first time that I painted him was my best attempt. However, when I started painting this, I was like, I want him to go to Africa. He couldn't go in person, but I want him to go in my painting. And so what I did is simply put that into my plan spontaneously. So then going back to this again, I had a plan for this painting, and the goal was for me to actually paint out this beautiful moment I had with someone where we were embracing. I had finished crying and she had hugged me, and someone captured this. And I wanted it to be so detailed. But as I was painting, I was like, no, I don't want it to be super detailed. I want it to be one of those things that you look at, like what's happening, but also I can see kind of sort of what's happening. And for me, it was all about the feeling. So I had my plan and I decided to deviate from it. And I showed it to a lot of people, and they liked the unclearness of it, the abstractness of it. So then, another example I want to show you all, it's actually going to be in this one second. So at an art session I was doing with some veterans, because I am joining a foundation where I'll be a leader for one of their art sessions weekly. We were painting together, and I had this reference photo of some flowers that I had taken, in which of course I painted them because it was fun. But then I decided to just focus on one of those flowers and I painted it. So what I did is with this, I started with ink and then filled it in with watercolor. But on this one, I started with watercolor and decided to fill things in with ink. And after I did that, I was like, what do I see? Because the ink added something extra to this that wasn't there before. And I felt like if you just imagine the ink wasn't there at first, it was just like paint splattering out. But after I put the ink around it, it felt like there was a hand reaching out to this flower. And to me, it just seemed kind of imposing. And so what I did is I went back in with my paint and I made the faint pink here, but I put more vivid pink in this area and even dabbed in some red so that it looked like this hand. And I did ask someone what they thought, and they said they felt like this plant was reaching out to strangle this other one. And I was like, perfect. That is exactly what's happening. It's strangling this plant and absorbing its color. If I don't know if you guys can see, like some of that pinkish red is coming up in here through the veins of this plant and going up into it. And this was a very representational piece. I don't have to go in necessarily to what it means, but the point is, my original plan during the session was literally just to paint this flower all by itself. Paint the group of flowers and then paint this flower so that I could get better at doing so. But I decided to throw in a new element, which was the pen, and come up with this idea right here. And it might be eerie to some people, it might be weird, it might be strange, it might be like, what the heck are we doing here? But to me, this speaks. It speaks to me, and that is the most important thing of all, that your art speaks to you before it speaks to anyone else. Another painting that I did, this was actually from my tutorial. The plan was to show you all how to paint this. But as I started going, I realized that I drew more neck in this one than I had in this one. That was an accidental deviation that I had to adjust to and learn how to work with, which would give this an entirely different feeling. And I'm very happy with the way this turned out. It feels different than this one feels. Those are my three pieces of advice for the time being. I'm sorry if this video was super long. I'll learn how to make shorter ones, I promise. But again, my tips, hold on. Let me get myself back on camera. So again, my three tips for you all to getting your ideas from your head onto paper. The very first one is allowing intuitive exploration to breed creativity, because once you do that, then you'll find it a lot easier when you have specific ideas. It'll be a lot easier to put them on the paper. My second piece of advice is to start before you're ready, because the paper is not sacred. You got 25% of an idea, 55%, 90% of an idea, go ahead and do it, because paper is just paper. And then my last one, let your plan evolve on purpose. And this is especially helpful for anyone who may have a partial plan. It's much easier to evolve. If you are someone who works in charcoal, maybe throw in some watercolor paint or some other kind of paint. If you're someone who works in watercolor, maybe throw in some charcoal or throw in ink or something. Allow yourself to work intuitively, and you'll find that you create something beyond what you expected. So I have other tips, but I wanted to go into detail on these tips rather than just saying them and then leaving you all to wonder what the heck she means, and provide examples. So the next time we meet, I'm thinking maybe I will do a video on each of these separately. Maybe have a little session where, one, you watch me go through the intuitive creation process to see what I create, and then another one where I have a partial plan and go with it and see how things work out. And then last, having a full plan of something I want to do and then adding a new element in it just to see what happens. So I hope that this was helpful. Please let me know. I'm gonna just be honest. I am so out of my element. This is the time where if you have watched all you want to watch, you can totally leave. But I'm Mari, so Mari's gonna say what she wants to say, and you can either listen or you can go. So I feel like I'm so out of my element doing this. It's nerve-wracking. It's frightening to be moving from doing Danmei to this, which of course we still got a little bit left because we've got QJJ Volume 8, and the people on Patreon, we have Thrice Married to a Salted Fish, which the last book comes out in October. So we'll be here for a little bit. But to be branching out into this, it's nerve-wracking. I am nervous as heck, but I feel so free. I feel at peace with what I'm doing and know that I'm going in the right direction. So I hope that this video, that it helps someone, that it helps multiple someones. And if there are ever any pieces of advice you guys want, or if you just want to know about my artistic journey, if there are any specific sessions you guys would like to have together, then you can definitely put those in the comments, because as we move forward, I would like to put more artistic content. And I would also like us to have artistic live sessions together. Sometimes those live sessions will be us doing things together, but sometimes it might be us chatting and doodling at the same time. You never know. So that's all I have to say. I hope you guys have a beautiful day and or night. And as always, 我爱你们。